The majority of you listening, you understand the 138-year Phoenix periodicity. You understand that it's an unbroken timeline. And although we don't have the records to fill all the necessary gaps, because, like I mentioned in When the Sun Darkens, I go into detail mentioning all the book burnings we've had in the past, all the cataclysms and resets that we've suffered. It's amazing that we have the records that we have. It is amazing that I was able to publish 3 books and pack them with a bunch of data on the Phoenix phenomenon. This is incredible alone. That here in the year of our calendar 2022, so much data could be amassed over the past 5,500 years of recorded history from so diverse sources of the ancient Near East to Mesoamerica, all the way from China to Aboriginal memories in Australia, all over the world, in the weirdest corners and pockets of Europe. We find references to this phenomena, and we find chrono markers that allow us to put them in their proper perspective. I've been able to do this from such a wide variety of sources. It just makes me wonder how much information from the ancient world I have not yet found, because I haven't gone through those records, and 2, how much has actually been destroyed that we don't have access to, because I can know that we have a vast gulf of information that's missing to us, and I know this because of all the ancient authors that are mentioned in different books that I have read, for which we have not a trace of their writings. None. We also have many authors like Pliny. Pliny cited over 100 other authors and sources, and yet many of them we don't know. We have never seen the books Pliny read. The Alexandrian library was packed with almost 2 million texts. We know Aristarchus had access to records that allowed him to know the Phoenix chronology. He wrote about a 2484-year period. Thales of Miletus. I've already shown all this evidence in my books and my videos that the Phoenix phenomenon of 138 years was very well known in antiquity, even preserved in a Jewish fragment, actually being 138 years. And in Egyptian texts, it's mentioned as 1656 months. There is no difference between 1656 months, 1,656 months, and the Western world's method of timekeeping by years. Annular, that is 138 years. 1656 months is 138 years. They're the exact same thing. It's just 2 different cultures recording the same phenomenon by different methods. The Egyptians used months as dating, and this has caused so much confusion. As I've documented, and I don't have to go into in this video, I've documented for you guys to understand that all these datings on the Atlantis, all these datings on these civilizations in Egypt being so far in the distant past, that these other modern authors they've bought into and even helped propagate the misinformation. All of that is easily shown if you just use the timekeeping methods that were employed by the civilizations that left us those systems, and don't use modern ones, because you're always going to get corrupted results. So anyway, everything fits within a 5,500-year timeline. All recorded history, all civilizations, everything fits. We don't have archaeologically anything that can show us anything about civilizations in this world prior to the 35th century BC. We don't have, anthropologists can provide nothing. Everything prior to that century is Neolithic. Neolithic structures, Neolithic campsites, Neolithic cave dwellings, troglodyte dwelling, all that. It's the 35th century BC where everything changed. So the Phoenix timeline of 138-year appearances, it is a constant, because even when the background phenomena changes, like the stellosphere, the Phoenix does not. We have discovered something fundamental. When the entire world recognizes that the year in the old system was 360 days, and that something happened in the year 713 BC, that within 5-year period, over 100 different cultures and new calendars appeared that all documented at 364, 365, and some even sophisticated at 365.24 or 0.25, which is what we measure it today. Something fundamental happened to the world. 5.25 days were added to every single year. However, the 138-year Phoenix periodicity remained unchanged. And like I said, I've documented it. Even over the gap in time between the difference in years, it wasn't humans that were discovering a new year worldwide. Something happened to the stellosphere to slow it down, to add those 5.25 days. The Assyrians in their records called it a new age. And anytime they said that in the Near Eastern records, it was indicative, just like the Hindu, the Vedic records, it was the Yugas, it was always some cataclysmic event that set a new age. Just like the mandate in heaven changed in China, the whole emperor, government, everything had to change because of a cataclysm. So this is what we have with the Phoenix. We have isolated a constant, but I'm going to show you in this video that we have found that it is attached to something far more profound. Listen, we have ancient authors that mention all these time periods, and we've gone through this many times in these books and in the presentations. So many different time periods that are specifically mentioned by ancient authors like Aristarchus. Remember, Nostradamus mentioned it. The Inca and the Maya left records, and Harold T. Wilkins has recorded these. They were all divisible by this number. 138, all attached to the ideas of cataclysm. Rashi, almost 1,000 years ago, wrote about it. The world is destroyed over 1656 years. I have charts to show all these things for those of you who have seen them. Go to my website. You can see charts for free. They're not really highly visible like they are on the thumb drives, but they're available. They're all over Facebook. So we have the testimony of all these ancient authors that I have showing that this 138 year period was no invention of my own. It was a discovery. So when 138 is viewed through other dimensions of arithmetic like phi, and like phi, it becomes 223.228. So when we multiply 138, the Phoenix number, by phi, 1.618, we get 223.28. That's very important because that shows the number 138 in another dimension of arithmetic. Now, we do the same thing with pi, and that's an easy one. Pi, 138 times pi is 430, I think it's 433 point something, 0.2, 0.3. Now, this, I have shown in several presentations that significant events in history are separated by these numbers, not by 138, but by the numbers of 138 as viewed in a different dimension of arithmetic, like the Similacrum protocols I've told you about many times, 1.618 and 3.1416. Pi and phi seem to be the primary governors of all space and time, not just physical events, as the physicists would have you believe, but even the basically the periods of time between significant events. Time and space are bridged by these numbers. Now, to find these significant events of 138 and other dimensions of arithmetic that link many other very famous events in world history shows that we're living in a part of a construct. So the published books, I'm going to show them one more time, all the backs of them, the published books, the posts, the videos, all my 350 something plus charts that examine the 138 year structuring of our holography. Look, these show 138 year periods in clusters of 414 and 552. You guys know this. You've already seen all this. But I have to say all this in order to get to where I'm going in this video. So, you know that the 414 year period is a cursed earth period, and the 552 year period is a phoenix cycle, and both of these cycles were very well known in antiquity. Stephen Jones has done a fantastic job in his own book, The Secrets of Time, having no knowledge whatsoever of the Phoenix thesis. He has no idea I exist. He's never reviewed my material. As a matter of fact, he published his material long before I even came across all this data when I was building my own chronicon. So Stephen Jones' chronology and my own chronology are exactly parallel, but for totally different reasons. My sources are very different than his, but we have the exact same dates throughout world history for the exact same years. It's very compelling. And he doesn't know anything about the Phoenix history, but he documented some cataclysms that were a part of the Phoenix chronography. It's very, very interesting. I recommend this book, even though I'm not a Christian and he is, and his book is very Christianized, and that's cool. That's cool. His research is impeccable. Now, just passing through, I appreciate that. Hit that like button. Smash that like button. So, yes, Stephen Jones, his book is absolutely packed full of 414-year episodes throughout major events in history. He shows them everywhere. So I did the same thing in this book. In this book, I have I have 2 chapters. I have 2 complete chapters showing all the events in world history that I have found, independent of Stephen Jones, that show all these 414-year episodes. Like, here's the second chapter. Modern cursed earth periods. This is just the second chapter. The first chapter is packed too. But 2 full chapters in When the Sun Darkens that just show all these events in world history. They've got to be scripted. They're all 414 years apart. It's crazy. So, and that's 138 times 3 for those who didn't already know. Now, this 138 year spacing, it is the principal message of the Great Pyramid, and all my students know that. Only a novice wouldn't know that by now. The Great Pyramid's principal message is this 138-year timeline embedded within it. Now, you also know that inside the measurements and dimensions of the Great Pyramid are all the physics constants. And I'm also telling you all the time that it doesn't matter. All the physics constants had to be in there in order for the pyramid to do what it was designed to do. So we're going to get deeper into that design today. So it wasn't until the Archaix research that the 138-year spacing of the structure itself had even been revealed. It had been completely missed by all. Frederick Norden Lewis in the early 18th century did not know about it. John Taylor, who brought the Great Pyramid to the Western world's attention, did not know about it. Robert Menzies, prolific researcher and analyst, didn't find it. Neither did Charles Piazzi Smith. Neither did Sir Flinders Petrie, who measured all the measurements in the Great Pyramid to the thousandths of an inch. His measurements are the only ones I go by. His measurements are the only ones Egyptologists will accept. His measurements are the only ones the scientific community today accepts. They are the only ones that I use for all my chronographical and chronological studies. This is a major point of interest. This 138-year period had never been revealed before until the Archaix material started showing it. But we've made some new discoveries, some very profound discoveries about this 138 number and how it applies to our very existence. All right, guys, this is not going to be an ordinary presentation that I do. We're going to fly through this. We have a lot of data to cover. So in order to establish that Bellamy really knew what he was talking about, and before we examine more of the capture flood data, let's explore what this man really knew. Let's see what he brings to the table. How does it comport with the Archaix output? I think you guys might be surprised. But like I said, this isn't going to be an ordinary presentation. We're going to fly through this. And I have my notes right here under my camera. And Bellamy starts off by going through many ancient legends and myths, traditions, something that Hans Boehringer did not do. Hans Boehringer stuck to the science. Hans Bellamy brought a lot more to the table in 1931 to support the cosmic ice theory about the moon and its relationship to our world. So he goes and he explains the thunderbird of ancient times that was so feared by the Native Americans and gives a lot of associations and explains that the thunderbird was nothing but the dragon of the old world. In fact, he goes into a lot of detail about there are 2 dragons that periodically show up in the sky and they bring cataclysms, but the ancients always knew that these destructions were they weren't caused by a single dragon. There were 2 different dragons that appeared over, and he says this, and he shows all these associations in different ancient records. What shocked me when I read the book is now a lot of the things in the biblical material that has been sanitized about Behemoth and Leviathan make sense.
You'll have to read his book to go into all those details, but he explains how the creation of the world, the dragons were responsible for everything. So, yeah, it's really, he goes into the Armenian feathered monster called Van and the Egyptian phoenix. He taught me something about the phoenix. I did not know that in Egyptian the phoenix was well known. It was called Bakbahu, or Bakbahu, which means to water or to flood. But the designation for the phoenix in the Egyptian hieroglyphs was 3 wavy lines, from which we got Aquarius. So, the flood. And you guys already know from my research, the phoenix is what caused the Great Flood in 2239 BC. So I got a much appreciation for this material because he's coming from a different vantage point, and he's being very specific that the capture flood that involved the moon has nothing to do with the later Great Flood of biblical fame. So I thought that's another very interesting point. So he explains an old cuneiform text at the time of the Great Flood. It was called the Year of the Raging or Red Shining Serpent, Year of the Serpent, in the old antediluvian calendars. And he explains in Jewish myths, we are told that Leviathan and Behemoth always appear before a flood. In fact, and remember, Leviathan and Behemoth are the 2 dragons that appear in the sky. In all the dragon myths, the monsters only appear in times of stress. Yeah, I'm not going to go into all his dragon material. It's a lot. So this book endeavors to show that the dragon myths and their inseparably close companions, the deluge and creation myths, are reports of the cataclysmic end of the tertiary age, of the catastrophic breakdown of the predecessor of our present moon. In cosmic ice theory, we have a situation of 2 moons being in the ancient world, but they weren't here at the same time. There was a moon here before the moon that we have now, and it totally fragmented and broke apart and caused an epic cataclysm. Later on, this other moon appeared, the one for which we have in the sky now. And there was a period of time when civilizations were recording that there was no moon in the sky. This was the time between those 2 moons. So this is the cosmic ice theory as presented by Hans Boehringer and Hans Bellamy. So he goes into depth about the Greek mythology about Typhon. I showed you Typhon as Fiend, the Fiend, Typhon. It's the youngest son of Gaia and Tartarus, Typhon being the phoenix. He goes into detail about how the phoenix brings flames. Zeus tried to attack it with a thunderbolt, but the actual phoenix from the ancient world is the personification of volcanic and seismic forces. Remember all the volcanoes and all the earthquakes that I have documented that were all attached to phoenix phenomenon dates? Yeah, he goes into that. And his theory is not about the phoenix. These are just things he's throwing out there as he's giving his dissertation about all the traditions in the world and how they differ from certain threads of traditions that are about the moon. He mentioned sea crops. Sea crops appeared and started Athens after a cataclysm. He says, after the great flood, men were found no more. The hills and valleys were covered with a fine loam and loess, a legacy of the dead satellite, which was recognized as being a new unfamiliar thing. Its brownish or reddish color all over the ground was taken as evidence that it was the material into which the dead had been transformed. So this cataclysm occurs in ancient times. Something breaks open the sky. It rains all over the ground, and the survivors see this red mud. They see this everywhere, and in their minds, this is what happened to their moms and dads and brothers and sisters and wives and husbands. What's left over after this cataclysm, because all the people are gone. The people are gone, and what's left is all this red fallout from the sky. Yeah, I couldn't believe when I read that. I was like, wow. Another thing that Hans Bellamy brought to my attention that I did not know about previously, I got it from his research, was that he says the epic of the mundane era of the Maya on the other hand, was established in the year 3373 BC. I have that in Chronicon. So, and then he says, by their calculation, it went by heptads of bactons, or 2,760 years. He's claiming the Maya were measuring the periodicity of the appearance of the dragons in the sky. And he says that their chief measurement was 2760 years. This is divisible by 138 and by the Phoenix cycle of 552. Hans Bellamy did not know the Phoenix cycle of, Hans Bellamy knows nothing about the 138-year chronology of Phoenix, nor the Phoenix epicycles that we call Phoenix cycles of 552 years. He doesn't know anything about that, but he knew this number from a Mayan text. That right there is profound. That's a data point. I need to add that to all my other ones. So, he goes into Peruvian legends that talk about the Great Flood, and he shows that in those Peruvian and ancient American legends, the Great Flood is very similar to the one in the Bible, like the flood of Noah. It is totally dissimilar to the massive flooding that happened when the moon appeared. Two different events. He said that the Great Flood of the ancient Americas, it lasted for 5 days, in which the entire time the sun was obscured. And I've showed this in my own research, that the Great Flood in 2239 BC, the sun darkened, which is a part of the Phoenix phenomenon. Let's see. He properly identifies Typhon and Phoenix with the ancient Egyptian Set. He says it right here, they are the same, and that they even had a nickname for Set, which was Apepi, the dragon of darkness. Both Apepi and Set are regarded as lords of evil and darkness, and Apepi is also called the Roarer. This is very, very intriguing. Remember, Phoenix brings this thundering humming coming from the sky that vibrates all kinds of physical objects. Yeah, causes liquefaction, all that stuff. So it's calling Apepi, Phoenix, Typhon, Set. It's all the same phenomenon. It's all described in ancient texts as being the very same. They are all just epithets for the Phoenix. And he's saying right here, the Roarer Apepi is Set. Yeah, Hans Bellamy, he knew his history. There's no doubt. We're going to get into that. He's very impressive. So he makes a statement. I'm showing it on the screen now. The awkward question which still remains to be answered is, why did those contemporaries of tremendous events, those deluge heroes, those divine ancestors who stood at the separation line of two world ages, why did they not call things by their real names and describe the overpowering thing in the heavens as a dying satellite instead of a living dragon? This is a very good point, but it's one that's covered in Archaics numerous times. So much that I can understand why many of you would miss what I'm about to say. He is asking the reader, why didn't they just call a spade a spade? Why didn't they just call it a dragon if it looked like a dragon in the sky? I mean, why didn't they call it a satellite if the moon, whatever? But I have already explained multiple times that there wasn't any, we didn't transmit information written out the way they did in ancient Sumer and Babylon on clay tablets, burning them into kilns, because when this event occurred, the infrastructure was sophisticated, and we were writing on tablets or holographic templates and technological devices. We had technology, and he goes into this. You're gonna hear in this presentation that he even goes into detail about massively advanced technologies existing in the ancient past. The moonfall of the old world ended that infrastructure. So these things were transmitted to us through more primitive frames of reference, because 200 and 300 years later, they had lost everything. We're going to get into that because he can say things better than I can explain to you. I'm going to read for you what he has to say about these things. They're very interesting. So we now move on, and we're going to look at what Bellamy says about the Tower of Babel and the Great Pyramid. He says the biblical tower myth becomes clear, however, if we regard the tower as what it really was, as a model of the mountain which safeguarded the ancestors, a model which, to a certain extent, practically, but chiefly, magically, was in its turn to save the sons from the deluge. The Tower of Babel story, according to him, was just that, a story after the flood. But what it's really talking about was the building of the Great Pyramid as a way to save the descendants of the builders. That's profound, and it's very relevant to the Archaix output. So he says, according to the myth preserved in the Bible, this tower of theirs was never finished. What's missing on the top of the Great Pyramid? From the very beginning, I told you guys that structure was never completed. Sorry about the little interruption. I turned my video off. My dogs are all going haywire. Okay. But Bellamy's revealing something to us very profound. So let's continue. The wicked wanted to escape this punishment concerning the flood when they're building the Great Pyramid. Hence the divine anger, and hence a certain amount of divine fear. For apparently the tower builders had other thoughts in their minds as well. And if their plans were not nipped in the bud, nothing will be restrained from them, which they had imagined to do. As the Lord said when he came down one day to have a look at the city and the tower which the children of men, a tribe of different race from the one that he favored, were building. Yeah, this guy's very well read. He may have had access to a lot of materials that we just don't have anymore. But this is some profound stuff. So he continues with Yosipon Mika Ben Gurion. This is a guy's name. This is a Jewish scholar's name who wrote Sagen der Juden, Volume 1. So maybe that's Saga of the Jews, or Legend. Sagen der Juden is Legends or Tales of the Jews, Volume 1. So it illustrates the memory of repeated floods and the necessity of propping the unstable firmament to prevent further cataclysms. The people of that time said, we know that in each eon, every 1656 years, the vault of heaven breaks to pieces. Let therefore strong pillars be built as supports, one in the north, one in the south, and one in the west. This tower here shall be the prop in the east. 1656 years is divisible by 138. All of you know who've been following my research, that's how long the great pre-flood period lasted. In the 1656th year, Phoenix appeared and the great flood destroyed the world. He says the snow mentioned in the above passages is really the wreckage from the old shattered firmament, which is professedly built of terrible ice. Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 22 and various Jewish myths. Recently I have gone into detail about the glaciations and the false chronology of the ice ages, explaining that the collapse of the vapor canopy is what created that amount of snow. Here it is right here in Bellamy's own book. And this was his theory way back then. So remember, there's over 60 different theories as to how an ice age could even be possible. Scientists push it off as fact, but there are no scientists in agreement about how it could be possible, because it requires humidity in order to create that much snowpack ice all the way up, and we don't have that. There is no humidity at the polar extremes. That's why today they only get 1 inch of snow a year. So something major must have happened to put all that snow there. It would have been very fast. This is the difference between catastrophism and uniformitarianism. These are the only two schools of historical analysis. You're going to be one of the other. Many people think they're catastrophists, but they use uniformitarian dating. Therefore, they're uniformitarian. They're not catastrophists. A catastrophist admits that we go by the evidence, we go by the traditions, and that the world can be destroyed and very suddenly. And then 400, 500, 600 years later, it can happen all over again. Uniformitarians is a different school, and it does its best to try to convey that all these catastrophes and all these events and myths and legends happened over hundreds of thousands and even millions of years. All untrue. So just remember that. That is the distinction between uniformitarianism and catastrophism. Catastrophists have all unlimited data. It's all over the world. Everybody can see it for themselves. Uniformitarians have to come up with all kinds of arbitrary and abstract procedures to say the things that they say. For a reason. They have to get you to agree that radioisotopes break down at a certain constant, because they can't have any variance. It would throw all their carbon-14 and potassium-argon dates off and all that. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. All the mental hoops we have to go through to accept uniformitarianism, when very simply you can just be a catastrophist and go by the evidence. So anyway, we have he says that there's an Aztec myth, says that the moon itself was undone by a great fire. In the beginning, the world was a dark place, though it was very dark in the world, as the sun had not yet been created. The goddess Medzith knew that this state of things could only be remedied by a great sacrifice, so she built a huge pyre upon which she burnt Nanhuatl, the leper. Then she threw herself onto the flames. Thereupon the sun appeared in the heavens. This is a vapor canopy collapse story. She's the goddess. She's the goddess. She's the moon goddess. She was attacked, which was the vapor canopy collapsing. Now she's no longer magnified at nighttime. Now she goes down to a smaller size. And now with the vapor canopy gone during the daytime, you can see the sun. You can see the sun just fine. Whereas before, all that light was diffused through the canopy, and you just saw a brightness, you never saw the sun. Now that all the sun calendars began, the Aztec myth is dead on. He said on another page that this goddess Medza, who is also addressed as the bright and dark lady of the heavens, was avowedly the moon goddess herself. I love reading these old books. He says, we can gather from the extent of the so-called continental shelves that up to a certain period in the Earth's past, generally considered to be the later tertiary age, the land area of our planet was considerably greater. Then, however, and probably rather suddenly, the shelves were submerged. The oceans, it is believed, received great quantities of water which had been tied in the huge polar caps of the glacial period. We do not deny this, but this quantity would not have sufficed to raise the waters suddenly to their present level. We are therefore forced to seek their origin outside the earth. That's a profound statement, and I'm in total agreement. I'm in total agreement, because the waters that he's looking for, that he thinks were peeled off the surface of the moon and pulled onto the earth to raise the ocean levels, they were closer than the moon. They have nothing to do with the moon. The cosmic ice theory promotes that. But where the waters are that answers the mysteries of Hans Horbriger and Hans Bellamy is the collapse of the vapor canopy. That's where all the water came for them for the snow accrual at the poles and for the ocean levels to rise. It was the collapse of the canopy.
But I have a whole playlist with a lot of videos in it. It's called Archaics, Gems, and Enigmas. Those videos are my evidence. Those videos contain all the evidence to me that we're living in a simulation. But those videos don't require a belief that we live in a construct, some type of simulated holography. They don't require that at all. That's why they're gems and enigmas. These are inexplicable. I am documenting phenomena that we have recorded, data points and data sets all throughout history, and I'm citing the sources. These you need to see to understand. Look, we live in a very mysterious medium. This isn't normal. These things are not supposed to be happening. That playlist is very ignored. It's called Gems and Enigmas. 12, 13 years ago, my publisher sent me some information. I was in prison. My publisher sent me information about a Dr. Barry Warmkessel and his research on an object, intramercurial object in our system that astronomers have been studying for the past 250 years. Now, I have a scientific book back here that goes into a lot of these. And I'm going to do a video very soon on Vulcan because it's a mystery object that the scientific community was keeping away from the public. It's something that comes very close to us, and things happen in our world. And I'm working on all kinds of things on the 1800s to show you the relationship between Vulcan and what was going on. But they call it Vulcan. I don't believe that that's what it is. But Dr. Barry Warmkessel had published a lot of material about this, and he was very standoffish with me. I had sent him a tremendous amount of data on my Phoenix research because in his own research, he cites that there is a 4968-year cycle that he has detected of objects that enter our solar system and do terrible things to our planet, our world, our planet, whatever your paradigm is, and then it leaves. So at the time, I wasn't on board with the idea that we're living underneath a multi-tiered hologram of the sky. At the time, I believed in the Newtonian, I believed in the basically the heliocentric model. Earth was going around the sun. When I contacted Barry, I no longer believe that. Now, don't categorize me as a flat earther as well, because I have problems with that. I believe flat Earth is a stepping stone. It's not a destination. We are specifically intended by something greater than we are to make the discoveries that we make, and we do. But once you fully come to the realization about all the tenets and all the possible scenarios that could account for a domed world on a flat plane, it leads you to other conclusions that you must follow. If you don't, you're stuck. You're stuck in the very world that you have discovered. So I have moved on from that. I never really was a flat earther. I just read Eric Dubai, and that led me to Zetetic Astronomy, and I read that, and I agreed with 100% of its tenets. It was just astonishing what I read in that work, and to find it was over 130 years ago, it just blew my mind. So that led me to Gleason. I don't know, somewhere on this bookshelf, right there. This is Gleason's book from the 1890s, showing all the scientific experiments that were conducted to show that we lived on a fixed world that is unmoving. So, having said all that, Dr. Barry Warmkessel very politely declined any collaboration between the two of us. And I understand, I was a prisoner at the time. He should have looked at the data. Supported mine didn't really support us. So the 4968-year cycle is very interesting. It is a data point, but in and of itself it means nothing, and it will continue until you review the rest of these data points and see where I'm going with this. So we have a scientist that documented a 4,968-year cycle attached to destructions on our world. Remember that. Now, 16 centuries ago was a historian named Censorinus. Censorinus wrote, he was basically a preservationist of older belief systems and texts. He was a lot like Pliny the Elder, who had recorded hundreds of earlier authors and writers and in his Natural History and other books that we no longer have today. But Censorinus, he had his take was pretty interesting, because he wrote about Aristarchus of Samos, who had visited the Alexandrian library and had access to astronomical and historical records that we do not have today. You all know the story of the Alexandrian library and how Alexander of Macedon had amassed this tremendous, vast wealth of libraries. They had emptied out the old and ancient libraries of Babylon, Nineveh, Nimrud, the old Sumerian, Akkadian. Everything was translated back into Macedonian, into Greek. The Ionian libraries. There was even the ancient Pergamum library, which was huge, way before the Alexandrian, and it was emptied and sent to Alexandria as well. And these scholars like Eratosthenes and Aristarchus, they had access to a wealth of historical and astronomical information. So we come across a second data point. That data point is that Aristarchus of Samos, he wrote that the world was basically suffering a cycle of destruction every 2484 years. That should stand out to every historian and scientist who reviews these type of materials, because he didn't say 24 centuries. He didn't say 25 centuries. He was detail specific to the number 2484. This cannot be ignored. It's a second data point. So it involves destructions, and it is the result of a knowledge that was acquired from older sources. This was Censorinus 17 centuries ago, but he is quoting Aristarchus, who lived 500 years before him. Aristarchus is admitting that his material is coming from even older materials. This is our second data point. Two very highly specific numbers concerning cataclysms in our world. Now, I have often told you guys about Archbishop James Ussher, 1658. You know what? Here's his book, The Annals of the World, right here. Annals of the World, Archbishop James Ussher. This was published in 1658. This is a very old book. He is a chronologist. Unfortunately, a lot of his material is mathematically in error, in wrong, because 350 years away. So I have corrected many of his mistakes in my chronicon, but where he didn't make a mistake, where he had trouble reconciling, was he had trouble dating things on the Anno Domini and the Gregorian and Julian dating. What he didn't have any problem with was the unbroken and very easy to calculate Annus Mundi system. That calendar is unbroken and goes back thousands of years. So he was able to date a great massive destruction known to the ancient world as the Ogygian deluge. The Ogygian flood was way after the great flood that we're all familiar with. The flood of Noah, the biblical flood, the collapse of the vapor canopy, the day the sky fell. This was after all that. It was during the Old Bronze Age, though. It started the Middle Bronze Age. Total civilization collapse. We'll get to that in a minute. But he was able to date that precisely to the year 2208 Annus Mundi, not the 22nd century Annus Mundi. Again, here is a very date-specific number. 2208 years. Annus Mundi was the date, according to him, that the whole world was destroyed. And this was after the flood. So this is our third data point. It's from a chronologist who admits that his material came from older sources. So we have a modern chronologist as well who found the exact same information, and we're not going to include this as another data point. It's only supporting the first. But Stephen Jones, in his book, The Secrets of Time, in the 1990s or 1980s, a fantastic book. Hundreds. No, I'm lying. I'm lying to you. It has thousands of dates throughout and shows exactly how those dates were derived. Okay, in the back of Stephen Jones' book is a world chronology showing what his calculations are. Basically, year one of the ancient world started year one of the pre-flood world, which was year one of the Annus Mundi calendar. He shows this in a 6-page chronological chart using the Assyrian eponyms, the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Jasher, which has hundreds of chronomarkers in it, the Book of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, and some small other historical references. But he puts together this fantastic chronology of the world and shows that year 1 is 3895 BC. Many of my veterans to this channel know that date. You've seen it in the Great Pyramid multiple times. You've seen it in historical texts, date monuments, stele, stelae, temple walls. I've shown it everywhere. It's the date. It's the date of something that was so horrific and harrowing that happened to our world that the survivors actually believed a new creation had occurred, a new heavens and a new earth. It is year 1 of the vapor canopy. Anyway, Stephen Jones, in his own chronology right there that I just showed you, dates the destruction of the ancient world way after the Great Flood. He dates it in 2208 Annus Mundi. The same thing Usher did, but he's using totally different source materials. Usher cites Marcus Varro, a Roman historian, and several others. And Marcus Varro cites about 11 other historians like Hestephaius, and there's so many different ones. This video is not, I'm not going to get detail specific and all that. That's not what this video is about. You can read When the Sun Darkens about the Phoenix, or Nostradamus and the Planets of Apocalypse if you want the source materials and data specific material. I got these books out because they're all going to be relevant to this video. Or my huge book, Shocking Secrets of Antiquity, I have all this Phoenix data in here as well. So, but I need in this video for you guys to understand why data sets are important and how you build them. Because so far what I've given you is just 2 data points, not a data set. These 2 data points happen to be confirmed many times by other sources, and that's okay, but that doesn't increase data points. The data points here are 3968 year period involving destructions, a 2484 year period involving destructions. Oh, and this third data point is a 2208 year period, 2208 year period involving world destructions. That's 3 data points. However many sources that cite those numbers don't increase the data points. All they do is support them. We have to be very specific when we are cataloging our facts, talking about a subject as complex as the Phoenix. Because even my veteran listeners on this channel, you have basically just taken a lot of the things I've said at face value. I know a lot of you have not read the books, have not looked at the actual sources, done the arithmetic yourself. You just agree with the presentations because they make sense. And that's okay. Not everybody's built for this type of material. Not everybody really gets off on history and chronology like I do. But I'm starting to attract the necessary attention by which I have to do this. So I'm going to do it with you guys. I'm not going to just do it in a little report and then send it off to the people that want it. I'm going to do it in visual presentation as well. So this is 3 data points. Let's move on to the 4th and see what we see. So after Archbishop James Usher, Archbishop James, Gogaiji and Deluge, 2208 a.m., Annus Mundi. Let's see. Let me look at my, I have a bullet point presentation on my computer. Let me see. I don't want to mess anything up. This isn't anything that we can really screw up here. So the Inca, there was a historian, a Spanish historian. Actually, he was half Native American. I think it was Incan, maybe Quechua. I'm not really sure. Some of you know who I'm talking about. He had left a book about 350 years ago. His name was Montesinos. And Montesinos left a history of the record of the Inca. He had lived and talked among them. He was half Inca or half Quechua or something. I can't remember. He was half-blooded Spanish, educated by the Spanish, respected as a historian, and he left us a record. In 1624, his book and his historical record was finished, but we have a very interesting deal. The Inca believed that they had come out of a great darkness, in the ancient past. The Inca had records of these cataclysms and destructions, and that they were the survivors. But what's really tantalizing here is the Inca provide a very specific number for the beginning of their nation. It was 2070 years. It was 2070 years. This is too precise. It wasn't 2,000 years or over 2,000 years or under 21 centuries like many historical records basically elucidate when they don't have specifics. The Inca had specifics, and they gave it to Montesinos. They regarded this number as very important. 2,070 years. That's a data point. Now, so we have the next data point, which is not one I want to review very long because it's probably mentioned in 80 of my videos already, and it's the fact that the pre-flood world was 1656 years. From the beginning of the vapor canopy world that Genesis describes as the antediluvian period, the pre-flood world, we have 1,656 years that 10 patriarchs lived, and that's the number you get when you add up all their life-death cycles in the book of Genesis. This isn't me telling you this. This goes all the way back to Flavius Josephus, Philo Alexandrinus, Rashi. 1,000 years ago, Rashi published that the pre-flood world was 1656 years. This isn't me. There are many. There are so many. And like I said, I'm not going to go through all the data here. You have to see it. Some of my videos will give you as many as 10 different sources in history who all claim that the pre-flood world was that number. That is also too specific. It wasn't 16 centuries and it wasn't 17 centuries. It wasn't 1,650 years approximate. This is a very specific number from ancient texts, 1,656. That's a data point. Now, a coincidence is that Archbishop James Ussher, who basically provided a chronology of the entire world, who dated earlier, I told you, the world destruction in the year 2208 Annus Mundi, the author of this book, and whose chronology appeared in about 5 million Bibles over 300 years, this man, he died in the modern calendar Anno Domini in the year, after writing about the flood, he died in the year 1656. That's pretty interesting. But it's just a coincidence. So let's move on. Rashi, when Rashi was talking about the year 1656, he was even more specific than just the number. Rashi, over 1,000 years ago, wrote that the world suffers I don't want to misquote Rashi. Rashi said that 1,656 years is the time between two cataclysms. That's a data point. So, Rashi was Jewish, and so was Nostradamus. The famous French prophet Michel el Nostradam was actually Jewish. And many Jews of the time period had concealed their identities. And like Christophe Colon. Christophe Colon was 100% Jewish. You know him in the history books as Christopher Columbus. So, this French Jewish prophet Nostradamus that I have written a book about, Nostradamus and the Planets of Apocalypse, this guy here, again, you know the centuries, the prophecies of Nostradamus, but what you probably don't know is that Nostradamus had written a private letter, and his private letters have been to his son Caesar and to some Spanish king or French king, I can't remember. If I was to go through here, I could probably find it real fast. I just can't remember what it was. But Nostradamus had written somebody. And I don't want to get bogged down in details. That's not what this is about. I just don't know exactly. My books have a lot of data. There's a lot of data printed on each page, so it's really hard for me to find. Nostradamus had wrote in a personal letter, and it was published by scholars about 40 years ago. In that letter, it specifically says that The period of time between Adam and Noah was 1,242 years. Again, too specific. There is nowhere in Genesis do you find a 1,242 year period. Nostradamus, his hidden letters also revealed a knowledge about the phoenix in the year 1902 and 1903. He mentions the phoenix, how the phoenix is going to return again. Nostradamus' quatrains were codified, and I show this in my videos, I show this in my published books. Who translated and discovered this date index? Because it's real, and it totally supports the phoenix timeline. But Nostradamus also encoded in his quatrains the actual number of years that's between every phoenix visitation. And I've shown this in my videos as well. Nostradamus was a genius. So, a very old book, absolutely packed with historical material from the year 1900. The scholar Alexander Delmar. The book is called The Worship of Augustus Caesar. In that book, we learn of a few things that we blew my mind when I saw them. But the evidence is in that book that the Roman Catholic Church completely hid one of the worst and most recent Phoenix reset cataclysms. And it was so devastating that, unlike other historical events, they couldn't be scrubbed from the history books, like 1902, much of the stuff that happened in 1902. It couldn't be scrubbed from the history books. It was too well documented in archaeology and different historical and different cultures in 522. So what they did is they invented a Justinian period, and they spread all these events out over a 20-year period that all actually happened in the single year of 522 AD. And then they collapsed the older Buddhic calendar of 552-year Phoenix cycles, collapsed it, hid it, created a 532-year cycle, backdated it to say that Jesus was born in 2 BC, and started the Anno Domini calendar. They did all these things just to hide this Phoenix reset. The Anno Domini calendar that we are on right now today is the result of this deception. I have an entire video of it showing all the sources and all the data of how this was done by the papacy. So I can't remember the title of the video. A lot of you have seen it and sent me emails about it. The current calendar we are on today, Anno Domini, was created by the Roman Catholic Church to hide the Phoenix calendar that we're discussing right now in data points. The Phoenix calendar has not been used since then, but it was known in Rome, it was known in Greece, it was known in Ionia, in northern Africa, Libya, and Egypt. It was known in ancient Palestine among the Phoenicians, the Philistines, the Israelites. It was known all the way back to Babylonian times. The Phoenix has been predicted many times, and I have shown that. But let's move on. Our next data point. So Alexander Delmar shows that one of the dominant historical periods, it was called the Buddhic calendar. And in the Buddhic calendar was based off of cycles that were exactly 552 years. That's specific as hell. Didn't say 550. Now, old Roman or Greek, I can't remember, maybe it was Ovid. Somebody from the ancient world said that the Phoenix cycle was 550 years. Others speculated it was 500 years. The reason is because they lived in a post-reset period where the older Phoenix technical information had been lost. But anyway, the old Phoenix calendar was 552 years. It was covered up by the papacy. This is a data point. It's too specific. 552. So we've been through all these data points. We'll do a little recap just real quick. But we're going to return to Stephen Jones real quick, who had documented the world was destroyed, or there was a great destruction in Canaan and Phoenicia and ancient Israel documented in the book of Jasher, and he dates it exactly 2208 Annus Mundi, the same number that is provided by Archbishop James Ussher for the Ogygian deluge, that he got the information from Marcus Varro, and Marcus Varro got his information from about 11 other historians that have Varro sites. So we have two different chains of evidence converging for that date. And Stephen Jones, this biblical chronologist that I have found so fascinating, that his dates perfectly line up with all my Phoenix dates, and yet he is coming from a totally different perspective chronologically than I am. My evidence is so different than his. But he documents in his book, The Secrets of Time, that he shows almost 100 different historical events that were all similar in nature, that were all separated by a 414-year cycle. That too, my friends, is what? Too specific. Not 400 years, 414 years. That we need to pay attention to. So I read his book, I went through it, and I saw he's absolutely right. Now, I took it a step further. In this book, I provide an entire chapter, not citing anything in his book, just to show, because my historical research is far transcends Stephen Jones. Stephen Jones was interested in dating all the events of the Bible using all the sources he could, and he did a fantastic job. I, on the other hand, wanted to include the entire world, not just the biblical world. So in doing that, I'll just show you the table of contents. That would be Chapter 5, starts on page 41, right here. This is my table of contents for When the Sun Darkens. Chapter 5, Cursed Earth Period. Chapter 6, more Cursed Earth Periods. I document way over 100 that he didn't even provide, showing that he's correct. There is a 414-year cycle, and it is specifically attached to curses. So, yeah, that was very interesting. I wanted to show you guys that because that's a data point. 414 years. It's 100% is a data point. So what does all this mean? Because I know just like me, you guys are not able to just memorize all these numbers and then put them into proper context, because I haven't even given you the historical materials yet by which you could put these together. So we have just received 9 numbers from historical records that they're not approximates. They're very specific. And they all concern destructions or negative connotations like curses. So resets, cycles of the world, and ancient calendars. These numbers are not arbitrary. They belie a knowledge that we have forgotten. So what are they? 4968, 2760, 2484, 2208, 2070, 1656, 1242, 552, 414. Now, these are, we have to put this in perspective. These are all from different continents, different cultures, different time periods, taken from texts written in different languages. This series of numbers should not be cohesive. This series of numbers taken from all over the world at different time periods should not in any way go together. They shouldn't. We are so far beyond any probability ratios that would make any sense to us when we consider the following fact. This is beyond coincidence. Every single one of these from the ancient and modern world are divisible by the number 138. 138 years is also 1656 months. But that's not where it gets really weird. Every one of these numbers represented for the cultures that recorded them destructions of their race, destructions of their civilizations, destructions of their world. So what is happening here? Every number divisible by 138, that begs us to find, that basically begs us to search the number 138. What do we see? My veterans know. You guys know because I have mentioned this. In the Moravian mythos, you guys have heard of the Moravian kings, the pre-French culture, very mysterious people. They came by way of Palestine, from Mycenae, from Crete. These are old world culture that was transplanted into what we know of as France today. In the Moravian mythos, we have a record where these people recorded a Jewish legend. In that Jewish legend, it claims that there was a group of angels that had been cursed by God because they forewarned the people of Sodom and Gomorrah of the destruction that was coming. They had warned Lot and his family. Because they had disobeyed the Godhead, this group of angels was cursed and banished from heaven for 138 years, the time between two destructions. So, you just can't make this stuff up. My books and in my videos cite all the sources for the data set, the data points that I just gave you. So many. Here are 10 independent mathematical facts that can all be verified from different time periods, different languages, different cultures, different continents. And yet, these 10 form one perfect data set. But this data set doesn't stand alone, because now that data set can be linearly projected forward and backward in time through history to be verified, to show why there was a belief in 4968 years, to show why there was a fear of 2484 years, to show exactly what is meant by the Inca that their calendar began 2070 years before, to understand why the Maya recorded a period of 2760 years, to understand fully what Nostradamus is trying to tell us about 1242 years. Now we get it. We understand what the historical record is conveying, that the vapor canopy world, the pre-flood antediluvian period, was specifically 1656 years. Linearly, we can see all with perfect mathematical precision. We can see these 552-year cycles all through history and what they mean. We understand that this is no longer arbitrary, that the ancients were in possession of a calendar system that looked like this. We understand the 1656 year periods. We understand the 552 year periods. We understand that these were all divisible by 414 year periods, but the smaller unit of measurement is that this period is actually 138 years, because 138 times 3 is 414. 138 times 4 is 552. 3 552-year cycles make 1656 years. 4 414-year cycles make 1656 years. When you get to 1656 Annus Mundi, the year of the flood, you just add 552 years of Phoenix cycle and you get to 2208 Annus Mundi, which was the year 1687 BC, the Ogygian deluge. The chronologies and the calendars that we have recorded today all fit perfectly together by this one discovery of the 138-year revisitation of the Phoenix phenomenon. And that's what we're going to get into right now, as soon as I put some water in my mouth and look at these comments. All right, where's my water bottle at? Let's see what you guys are commenting about, since I've been running my mouth so much. All right. Yes, Phoenix is a benefactor protocol. It's all a matter of perspective. Depends on how you've been living and what your take on reality is really about. I'm going to show you some more evidence of that. But Remember, in 1902, Charles Fort had documented a lot of anomalous things that had fallen out of the sky, red mud and red earth. He even showed the scientific journals that were talking about the material, the red material in some area, dependent upon local weather conditions. In some areas of the world, it was a red fine dust. In others, it was gummy. In others, it was a red rain. In other areas, it fell as red mud. In Australia, it was 500 million tons per square mile. Red mud rained all over Australia in 1902 and 1903. Charles Fort, after itemizing all the weird stuff that happened after the appearance of a very unusual red star in the sky, he said 1902 was the other dark age. Now, that's just a coincidence because 1902 didn't really begin a dark age. It ended one that began in 1890 because in 1902 we have something very unusual. In 1902, as I've documented now in 5 videos, all the strange things that had happened, in 1902 we have a rat race. It's almost as if every billionaire and every millionaire who was hiding the years before suddenly appeared in 1902 and unleashed their wealth. They unleashed their hundreds of companies, their GMOs, all kinds of stuff, NGOs, all these entities, government bureaucracies, all these scientific panels. It's almost as if the world was in stasis for years leading up to 1902. And then when the danger passed and the elite realized this isn't the big one and it was over, they sent scientists all over the world to basically get more information and discover what was going on. 2 of those scientists went to Martinique, where 30,000 people were incinerated in less than 20 seconds when a volcano, Mount Pelée, blew up in the French Caribbean. Those 2 scientists were studying insects and plant life and the volcano itself, and every day they were exposed to the ambient radiation that came from that volcano. And it was documented that those 2 men, one in their late 50s and one in their 60s, both grew 2 inches taller. That's a vapor canopy condition. Vapor canopies are created by an immense amount of volcanism, and this is what we find in the ancient past. So 1902 was 138 years before 2040 when the big one is going to happen. So let's discuss these dark ages. This 1902 Charles Fort talked about. The Anno Domini, we've already covered that. The whole Anno Domini calendar that we live under today was created at one of these Phoenix-induced dark ages. But when we go further back in time, we find something very anomalous. There was a dark age that very few historians have ever covered, but archaeology shows it well. In the year 31 BC, over Egypt, it was recorded that a fiery red dragon flew over the sky of Egypt at night. 31 BC, during the Battle of Actium, when Rome was finally subduing Queen Cleopatra and her Roman lover Antony. In 31 BC, as the navies met, there were tremendous earthquakes in Olympia. Many of the old Greek ruins fell. They were just totally obliterated and destroyed. They had been standing for a long period, the ones that had survived prior earthquakes. But in these earthquakes, most of the Greek ruins that were surviving from the old Greek world fell. They were already 7, 8, 9, and 1,000 years old. They fell. These are ruins that go back to the days of Atreus. These are the Argives, the Dorians, basically the pre-Greek people, the settlers that came from Mycenae and Minoa and Argos. So their ruins all toppled and fell in 31 BC. Well, at the same time, a massive earthquake shook Jerusalem and leveled buildings and killed a lot of people throughout Judea. This is in 31 BC. But the Near East and the Mediterranean merely saw the phenomena and felt the earthquake shakes. Where the real destruction happened was in the Americas. In the ancient Americas in 31 BC, the Olmec civilization was completely obliterated. In La Venta, Central America, all of Veracruz, all the old Olmec states collapsed, gone. The survivors basically became what we know of as the Maya. They preserved the same timekeeping system. But the very last final date ever found on Olmec steels translates in our calendar today as 31 BC. You can't make this stuff up. This has been reported even in academic books, and I cite the sources in my own published books. 31 BC was a phoenix year. Not 32 and not 30. 31 BC when all these events happened. And I'm not even naming all the events. I'm just going off memory right now to let you guys know. In the ancient Americas, there is a dark age that separates the collapse of the Olmeca and the rise of the Maya, the Mayan culture in the exact same part of the world. So the separation between these two cultures is a dark age, and it was caused by the Phoenix in ancient America. Water break. Looking to move to the Texas Panhandle, are you? I'm looking at questions real quick. Question, created an our my image? If so, who is our? Same as Wolf says, as opposed to lion. I don't know what it's talking about. But to me, I interpret the Bible a lot differently than most people. It says, in the beginning, man was made in the image of God. And in the image of God was man made. And it's a poem. It's like a poem and a riddle. But you know what? It just tells me that humans on the outside of this construct created our present human avatars for us to live through this construct. If you're made in the image of gods and we look the way we look today, then that means the gods look the way we look in here, which means the gods are just humans on the outside of the construct. That does not mean at all that there isn't an oversoul, that there isn't a God. It just means that we're not living in a real reality right now. Let me continue, though, because remember, these are just conclusions. They have nothing to do with my data points. They have nothing to do with my data sets. Anytime we're discussing simulation theory, don't get turned off about it. This is just from my perspective when I take into consideration all the anomalies of the ancient world. When I take into consideration that my research, Chronicon, shows an absolutely too perfect mathematical distribution of events that cannot be random. They can't. And I've documented this over and over and over in published books and in videos and articles. There's just no way the history of the world could have unfolded with these mathematical patterns, because it shows that events are not random. And if events are not random and they're controlled, therefore I'm living in a construct. I'm not living in a real reality. And when I listen to my scientific betters who have analyzed basically matter down to its subatomic structure, and we find out that everything just dissolves into oscillating fields, and I listen to astronomers and people who know about astronomy, and the more they magnify the stars, they just dissolve into oscillating fields, then I'm in a hologram. Simple as that. And you can't really magnify pure data from inside a construct. You will never be able to objectively learn about the construct itself. You can only analyze its structuring, and analyzing its structuring is only done by the unfolding of events that you mathematically analyze. We're stuck in a situation that we can't study. We can only study the effects. All the causes are outside the construct. So anyway, y'all know me, I'm going to hit them tangents. I'm going to lose my train of thought. We're talking about the Phoenix. I just want to let you know, man, don't get turned off by simulation theory. It may not be your conclusion, but my conclusion and your disagreement with my conclusion will never, ever change the fact that the Phoenix phenomenon is so well documented. It's basically an unbreakable thesis. I stand behind it. It's got too much data. There are theories that are very popular in the world today that don't have an ounce of supporting data, like even comparable to what we have on the Phoenix phenomenon. So let's get back to it. So 522, 1902, they're all separated by spans of time that are divisible by 138 years. And there's many events that happened in between those, but they didn't start dark ages. That's what this video is about. When the Phoenix phenomenon initiated dark ages. 1902, Charles Fort referred to a dark age, but 522, the dark age the Roman Catholic Church tried to hide. That was a dark age. 552 years before that, the ancient Americas experienced a terrible dark age. We do not have any historical records of the destruction that happened at the time. What we have is archaeological records. David Hatcher Childress has provided a lot of those through all the sources that he's documented and read. And there's been many archaeological foundations that have basically documented all we're talking about lava flows that go over pyramids. We're talking about whole pyramid cities that were broken as if they were like matchbooks. The level of destruction that happened was horrific. That happened in deal. But the survivors moved on and quickly built an even more advanced civilization. They flowered into the Mayan. So we'll move on from that. That was 31 BC. It started a dark age, but that dark age wasn't in. That dark age was not on the hemisphere of Egypt, the Mediterranean, and the Near East. That dark age was local to the Americas. Hey, we're doing a really good overview of presentation for those of you who have been getting confused. You don't really understand how all these data sets coalesce. This is the video for you. This is the video to share with people about how in depth the archaics rabbit hole goes. This is the overview. We have a data set called the Phoenix phenomenon, which stands completely separate and has its own data sets and data points. We have another one on the Great Pyramid, the chronometry of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, the absolutely precise scientific methods, measurements that were done to a thousandth of an inch. It is its own data set, and what it reveals is astonishing. Now, everybody, this ties to May 2040. These are two independent bodies of research with their own independent sources and their own arithmetic that can easily be shown. Then we have a third data set, and it's fascinating, and it's what we're going to start with right now. It's the prophecies of Nostradamus. Not as, and I have like 11 different translations of Nostradamus, not as, Cheatham and Ovason and all these different Nostradamus scholars have just translated the quatrains. Nostradamus knew from the very beginning that people were going to read the centuries. They were going to read his quatrains. He knew that. And he knew they would never make sense of it if they read it from beginning to end. Because it doesn't make sense. It's a shotgun blast of a bunch of prophetic threads. However, one guy, a French scholar named Mario Reading, he cracked the code. And only by using his date index do we see that Nostradamus perfectly dated the Phoenix return, not only in the year 2040, but in the month of May. And we're going to go into those details right here because it has been almost 3 years now since I released my Nostradamus material, but those two videos I have on Nostradamus haven't really been watched by a lot of people. And I get that. They're old videos. YouTube probably doesn't bring them up on people's threads anymore. I get that. They're way far down in the playlist. It's been almost 3 years, like 2 years and 9.5, 10 months since I read for you guys the prophecies, the Yorkshire prophecy. I read for you guys like almost 3 years ago, Mother Shipton's prophecy, Earth of the South Hill. And I did a video that examined, because there's a lot of critics on that. And I get that. I address that. The prophecy has been manipulated by people in the 17 and 1800s who injected current events into it to make it look like she prophesied those. Well, in my rendering, I was very specific, and I show you what is fiction and what is fact. I remove the material that was inserted and show you what we're left with, the core material about the prophecy. Now, I'm not going to link. That's a long prophecy, and I'm not going to go into it. But in this video here, because it's relevant, it's a fourth data set. It's totally different. And it's right here. I'm going to read it for you guys, just the relevant part about the Phoenix. So we have a fifth data set. Are all the prophecies around the world? The return of Fenrir eats the moon. Moon turns red. The sixth seal of Revelation. Yeah, the sixth seal of Revelation is a Phoenix phenomenon, 100%. It's what happened many times in the past. You know, it mirrors exactly what Mother Shipton says. She calls it the return of the sixth sky dragon. Same thing. It's the exact same thing. This falls into play with the stone of the fifth sun of the ancient Maya. Every time the sun died, and it started a new age. There you go. It's all about the suns again. Here we go. What is Phoenix? Phoenix is a giant celestial phenomenon that was likened to a bird that immersed itself in the sun, darkened the sun, then burned up, and out of the ashes grew a whole new world. So that's the Phoenix motive. We're going to start with our brother Nostradamus. For those of you who don't know, he is a man of Jewish pedigree. Now, a lot of you know I have a lot of problem with Jewish historians, a lot of problems with them, and it comes out in my videos. I'm a critic, 100%. Now, Nostradamus was very honest in his letter to King Henry. He was also honest in his letters to his son Caesar, where he admitted in the existence of the Phoenix. He admitted that he even knew the chronology. He even demonstrated this knowledge by telling King Henry about that there was a period before the flood that was 1,242 years. In this discourse to King Henry in a private letter of Nostradamus is a powerful revelation. There's no reason for that man to have put that number out there. It is divisible by 138. It's one of the many numbers that we have that in Archaix that you guys know. I have videos that show a whole list of all these numbers concerning sun darkenings and the time between cataclysms that are found in many ancient records and traditions. In every single one of those numbers in that list are divisible by 138. That is a sixth data set. It completely stands alone, because these are all written in different time periods on different continents by different authors, written in different languages, and yet it's beyond coincidence. It's beyond coincidence. They are describing a phenomenon from the perspective of the very culture and the history of that culture that they lived in. So Mario Reading, he published this date index. His date index is so accurate that 15 to 17 years ago, when he published this book, in that book, he targeted 2022 as the death of the Queen. But yeah, well, when I studied his date index, I wasn't impressed at first, because I didn't realize that he had basically gone against his own date index. He published a date index and showed how Nostradamus did it, and how you can find and the symbols attach it to other passages, and then it might be quatrain, it might be century 9, quatrain 5, and then it'd be 5-1, but you got to go to 5-2 of a whole different century to continue the thread. Then 5-3 might be the same thread. Then 5-4 is under a different century. It was genius how he put this together. Nostradamus. Mario Reading's theory initially lost credibility. Not because his theory was wrong, but because he started attaching current events that were happening in 2006, 2007, whatever, to Nostradamus' prophecies. But when he attached those, he wasn't using his date index. So I sent the manuscript to my publisher and showed him, hey man, look, this dude's date index, his book is not popular because he disabused his own material. He abused his own material. But look at this. I showed my publisher, look at this. This is unbelievable. This date index is real. And then I already had the May 2040 date for the Phoenix return. And we'll get to that in this video. But so did Mario Reading. He just didn't know it. His date index confirmed it. So I needed more confirmation. Even though what I'm about to read to you is all in the date index, I had to look up the 2046 material too, and it shocked me. Nailed it. Only using the date index do we find that Nostradamus fully knew about what was going to happen in the year 2046, 6.5 years after 2040. Oh yeah, it's beautiful. So let's get to it, because there's some really interesting things to see here. So in Century 2, Quatrain 43, Nostradamus 500 years ago wrote, during the appearance of the bearded star, the three great princes will be made enemies. The tremulous peace on earth will be struck from the sky. The Po, the winding Tiber, a serpent on the shore. Century 5, Quatrain 59. Listen to this rivers. The English chief stays too long at Nimes to train. And many will die through war started on that day when a bearded star falls in Artois. The first one was about the bearded star. The second one is about the bearded star. In Century 6, Quatrain 6, he will appear towards the north, not far from bearded star in Cancer. Susa, Sin, Boeotia, Eretria, the great man of Rome will die. The night dispersed. 500 years ago, they thought Nostradamus was talking about the Pope. The great man of Rome will die. It's not. The great man of Rome is the sun. The sun is the pontiff. How do we know that? Nostradamus tells us here in another quatrain. 3 passages about the bearded star. What's unusual is that the bearded star comes out of the north. What did astronomer Hoffman see in the Phoenix year 1764? He saw through his scope, as many Europeans were watching, the sun darkened as an object coming out of the north passed over the surface of the sun, moving southward toward the ecliptic. And he put that in the Royal Astronomical Minutes. I've published this many times. That is astonishing, because objects are not supposed to move in that direction. It's going across the ecliptic. It's not traveling on the ecliptic with all other bodies that are seen moving in the heavens. It's going this way. Yes. And this is exactly what we find in ancient texts that I cite in my videos and in my published books, where the phoenix travels on a path from north to south. Yeah, it wasn't just astronomer Hoffman. It's an ancient text about this unusual movement of this thing that darkens the sun. It comes out north and it travels toward the south. So, Century 10, Quatrain 67, a very great troubling in the month of May. Saturn in Capricorn, Jupiter and Mercury in Taurus, Venus also in Cancer, Mars in Virgo. Then hail will fall greater than an egg. Same thing the book of Revelation says about the sixth seal before the apocalypse. The sixth seal, sun darkens, moon turns blood, rocks fall from the sky, great earthquake. A very great troubling in the month of May. Now, the problem with the astronomical monikers here is that over and over we find that astrology was very popular in the days of Nostradamus. So when he gave these astronomical deals out, that's not what they are. They're not astronomical coordinates. These are codes for other things that he decodes throughout the centuries, because he knew that any astrologer could go through his deals and decode what he was saying. He didn't want that. He was an astrologer himself. He coded everything. Century 2, Quatrain 15, a short while before a king is murdered, Castor and Pollux in the ship. That's May, June. A bearded Terrera and Turin are forbidden territory. Commentaries on the original video, what that means by using his... They are forbidden territories because they're flooded out. The coasts have disappeared. They are now ocean. Whole geographical areas along the coasts of Europe are now underwater. So, and he goes into more detail about that. Oh my God, buffering again? Are you serious? I'm going to keep going until it's just obvious. All right. So here we go. We got that bearded star again. References to Castor and Pollux, that time of year. So he continues. The trembling of the earth at Martara, the tin island of St. George, half sunk. Drowsy with peace, war will arise at Easter. In the temple, abysses are opened. This doesn't sound very good for the United Kingdom in 2040, in the month of May. Doesn't sound good at all. Major, huge earthquake. Erica Cheetham and many other Nostradamus scholars are convinced this is a reference to Britain. Century 1, Quatrain 84. The moon eclipsed in great gloom. His brother becomes the color of blood. The great one, hidden for a long time in the shadows, will hold a blade in the bloody wound. Here are references to the phoenix. Here are references to a great red moon, a red sky, a bloody sky. These are all phoenix references. Century 6, Quatrain 88. A great kingdom will remain desolate. Near the Ebro, they will be gathered in assemblies. The Pyrenean mountains will console him when in the month of May, there will be earth tremors. Wow. All this is May 2040 in the date index. Century 1, Quatrain 82. When even the trees shake mightily and the south wind seems covered in blood, so many will try to escape that Vienna and all Austria will shake with their passing. I got to stop for a minute. The language Nostradamus used 500 years ago for this quatrain is borrowed from the sixth seal of the book of Revelation. That's what it's borrowed from. When even the trees shake mightily and the south wind seems covered in blood. Yeah, that's the sixth seal of Revelation all over again. Nostradamus. The Phoenix was going to return in May 2040. He knew that. He will try to escape that Vienna, Austria will shake with their passing. Nostradamus sees a mass migration, a massive migration of people coming from a mighty kingdom nation that will remain desolate because of the Phoenix phenomenon, because of this major event that just happened, this great cataclysm that turns the moon red, that darkens the sun. A massive amount of people will enter Europe and pass through it, making the cities of Europe shake. Remember, guys, it's a mass migration after 2040. I've discussed this in other presentations. People will be leaving North America in droves, coming back to the lands of their ancestors' nativity. All right, let's move on. Now, This, like I said, guys, this is an overview. For those who want more meticulous information, you want to see the sources, you want to chase the data so you can equally convinced, you need to go watch those earlier presentations. Or you can even read my book, Nostradamus and the Planets of Apocalypse. I go into a lot of detail, hundreds of sources. I cite 11 different translations of Nostradamus going through this material. This is an overview. So don't think this video is the one that's going to prove everything. You need to go to the playlist and look at the sources. Century 1, Quatrain 80. Oh, we just did that one. Century 1, Quatrain 87. Earth-shaking fire from the center of the earth will cause tremors around the new city. Two great immovable powers will war for a long time. Then Arethusa will redden the new river. I have a video called the Arethusa Code where I show you that it's a code for Phoenix. And if the red fallout of Phoenix is reddening the waters of Europe, the rivers of Europe. Now, the new Nostradamus translators and scholars, they believe this. Again, having issues again. Golly, man. Yeah, this is aggravating, guys. I'm really sorry about that. Can you hear me? All right, cool. I'm back on. The maypole dance, that's where it derives from. A ritual against the phoenix. Got to be happy when if somebody mentioned maypole, that's exactly what it is. You can hear me. You might not be able to see me very good, but you can hear me. The two great immovable powers will war for a long time is not a terrestrial war. The two great immovable powers are the sun and the moon. We have a lot of Nostradamus codes like that, and in the commentary it explains exactly how we derive those conclusions. When you take the centuries that refer to May, the month of May in Phoenix, it's really interesting. Century 243 equals 45. Century 559 equals 64. Century 66 that I just read all these to you, equals 12. And century 215 equals 17. Nostradamus was also a mathematician. In the date index, he drew our attention to these four quatrains. And then when you add all the quatrains and centuries up, you get 138. It's not a coincidence. It's by design. Just like the very design of him mentioning the phoenix in his letters. He was aware. Not only did Nostradamus mention the phoenix in his letters, I'm gonna read it for you real quick. It's in here somewhere. We'll get to it in a minute. About 1902. Century 8. Quatrain 81. Here it is. Here we go. Century 8, Quatrain 81. The new empire in desolation will be changed from the northern pole. From Sicily will come such trouble that it will bother the Enterprise tributary to Philip. These are nations in Europe. But the new empire in desolation is the United States. It's North America, Canada, all that. That's the new empire in desolation. Remember, guys, I'll tell you, there's a 30-degree shift coming where the United States is going to be shoved down to the equator. Yeah, it's going to be changed. The northern pole. On the other side of the world, China's going up to the frigid zones. Australia is going to be on the equator. The quatrains continue. Buffering, game over, come back. Are you serious? I don't have any notifications on my computer that is buffering. Can you guys hear me? It's okay, it's fine. A great earthquake will totally destroy the packed theater. Air, sky, earth will be murky and unsettled, so that even infidels will call on God and the saints to steer them. Okay, Castor and Pollux are in the ship. People will call on God and the saints to steer them. What has happened? What's going on? I'm going to tell you, the earth has been moved out of her place. It's been moved out of her place, and now it's wobbling. Whatever, it doesn't matter if it's a flat. Now the sky says erratically, which makes us believe on the surface that something's wrong. The world's turning upside down, just like the old prophecies in the Old Testament. I will turn the world upside down. I will make it the stars thereof dark, and the moon shall cease shining. All these old prophecies. So, the sun in 20 degrees of Taurus, there will be a great earthquake. The great theater full will be ruined. That'll be nightmarish. To have talking about a great theater, it's talking about like a dome, a super dome, full of 50,000 to 80,000 people. That's going to be nightmarish. The great theater full will be ruined. Darkness and trouble in the air, the sky, and land when they call upon the faithless God and his saints. Again, same wording, same terminology, same event. That's it. Century 6, quatrain 97. The sky will burn at 45 degrees. Fire approaches the great new city. Immediately, a huge scattered flame leaps up when they want to have proof of the Normans. A lot of scholars believe this is New York City being destroyed. In the date index, it's May 2040. I don't know. Sounds very compelling to me, though, because New York is at 45 degrees north latitude. So it could very well be New York being totally destroyed, which is interesting because the Dutch bought Manhattan Island, where New York is, in the year 1626, which was a phoenix year. 138 years later, in 1764, in the month of May, astronomer Hoffman and 500,000 Europeans saw the phoenix cover the sun. 1764. 138 years after that was 1902. I got 5 videos on that. Everything that happened in that year. 138 years after that is 2040. So it's interesting that we can now tap into a little bit of Edgar Cayce. Some of you are familiar with the Sleeping Prophet, Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce's career began in 1902. He started doing readings, healing people. So, I think his involved hypnosis or something. But his first paranormal experience was in 1901. In 1902, it was realized that he could go to sleep or be hypnotized and be able to come up with remedies for the sick. Edgar Cayce, in reading 5748-5, he's got thousands of readings, but in reading 5748-5 in the year 1932, Edgar Cayce said this. This is under hypnosis. Received the Great Pyramid at the records from the beginning of that by the priests to that period when there will be a change in the earth's position. Edgar Cayce linked a future change in earth's position with the ancient Great Pyramid. So we need to look more into that. Merrill GM Gigi, I really thank you. 204. Chief Cornerstone. Now, go into a lot more detail. If you were to read the book Nostradamus and the Planets of Apocalypse, I go into a lot more detail. This, like I said, this is a simple overview. But what we cannot ignore is here is the actual letter I have. You can't see it on my tablet. I'm sorry. The letter from Nostradamus to King Henry of France, where he mentions the 1242 year period, which is a phoenix period divisible by 138. It's just half of what Aristarchus said. Aristarchus said that the world is destroyed every 2484 years. Well, 2484 is 1242 times 2. Both numbers are divisible by 138. Nostradamus historian David Ovason, in his Secret of Nostradamus, wrote that the prophet employed the lunar timeline of Trithmithius in quatrain 148, which reads, "The sun will take the remaining days, and then is accomplished the end of my prophecy." Ovason believes that this quatrain pinpoints the year 1901. What? Y'all, my Archaix veterans, are you listening to this? A code in the quatrains of Nostradamus discovered not by Mario Reading, but another French scholar, Ovason. He said Nostradamus has a code that identifies the year 1901. Okay. As beginning the last days of the sun. Oh yeah, it gets deeper. Ovason believes that this quatrain pinpoints the year 1901 AD as beginning the last days of the sun. The sun is the center of all calendrical systems. It is my belief, this is Jason speaking, it is my belief that the prophet actually targeted the year 1902. And this would have remained simply as wishful conjecture had it not been for another amazing Nostradamus discovery. In the year 1994, members of the Italian National Library at Rome discovered buried in the archives a formerly unknown and unpublished manuscript fully illustrated with paintings and text done by Michel del Nostradamus. After studying the work, the Roman researcher and Nostradamus expert Ottavio Cesare Romati published in his book, Nostradamus, the Last Manuscript, the following passage written by the prophet, which refers to the year 1903. Many will die before the phoenix dies. Until 670, his dwelling shall endure. Yeah, well, one scholar says 1901. One scholar says 1903. The 1903 version mentions the phoenix. The letter that is translated by Cesar Romati to King Henry also mentions 1242, a phoenix number. These aren't coincidences, guys. Nostradamus had possession of manuscripts. He wrote his son Caesar and told him that the quatrains and the centuries were coded from a vast archive of ancient books and scrolls that he put his prophecies together. And then, in order to hide them from the agents of the papacy, he codified these and then burned the originals, the books, and let the world have the quatrains. Here are the centuries of Nostradamus. These possess the future, all what this whole library had. Now, he was of Jewish pedigree, and there was a lot of censoring back then. The Dominicans found out that any Jewish families in that area of Europe had secret libraries. They would have took them. So, yeah, this is what was going on back then, guys. We're going to go into Mother Shipton because this is an entirely different data set. This isn't attached to Nostradamus in any way. However, she lived just slightly at the same time, but she was an illiterate witch in England, Ursula Southill. Her name means something like Southern Sun or something, Southill, but her prophecy is fantastic. Now, for the critics out there who think her prophecy is total forgery, you have to understand, yes, many interpolations have been made, but they're easily identifiable and they can be easily removed. Same thing with the New Testament. You can see the original core material in Matthew, Mark, Luke. In Luke, when you study Matthew, Mark, and Luke as a comparative analysis in 3 columns, and you go down, you can easily see the Q document, which is the source document, detailed from 3 different perspectives now. Matthew, Mark, and Luke were written by 3 different individuals who were all using the same document, the Q document. This is what academia and scholars have found. And they have also noticed that the Q document is independent of the source for which the Gospel of John came from, which is the one that is admitted to be the closest to the Gnostic teachings. John, it's a totally separate gospel. But anyway, same thing. I'm going to read this to you. I'm not, 3 years ago, I read you the whole prophecy, and it's long. I'm just going to read you the relevant part right here. And before I start, let's make sure y'all can hear me good, because I know I've been buffering in and out. Thank you, Peace Jen. Meryl G, thank you. I want to make sure y'all can hear me before I start this. Good. Thumbs up. All righty. Now, the relevant part begins on line 72. In 1926, build houses light of straw and sticks. For then shall mighty wars be planned, and fire and sword shall sweep the land. When pictures seem alive with moving feet, when boats like fishes swim beneath the sea, when men like birds shall scour the sky, half the world deep drenched in blood will die. My friends, 1926, World War II is planned. It unfolds almost immediately. It's a banker's war. 1926, she got it right. World War II started. When pictures seem alive with movements free, it's movies. When men like birds shall scour the sky, it's aircraft. Yeah, she got all that right. She got submarines right. When boats like fishes swim beneath the sea. So she's providing a frame of reference here. Remember, in her time, people were building out of solid building materials. Today, we just throw up whole neighborhoods out of much inferior building materials. So, when men like birds shall scour the sky, then half the world deep drenched in blood will die. That's exactly what happened in the next few years in World War II. Listen, guys, World War II was about depopulating the world. World War II, the death toll wasn't just from the guys that were fighting. More civilians died in World War II than anybody who actually fought the war. Yes, people don't know that. The genocide, the city of Dresden, what was done to the German people, Austria, what was done in Poland, what was done in Russia, in China, in Cambodia, in Laos. Genocide was going on, and it's almost all been covered up by establishment history. But you can get the specialist literature. Specialists are everywhere now. It's not even a secret now. You can do all the research. Yeah, hundreds of millions of people were being exterminated outside the context of World War II at the same time as World War II was unfolding, and in the couple of years after it. Then half the world deep drenched in blood shall die. Here's verse 80, line 80. For those who lived the century through, 100 years after World War II, for those who lived the century through, in fear and trembling, this shall do, flee to the mountains and the dens, to bog and forest and wild fens. For storms will rage and oceans roar when Gabriel stands on sea and shore, and he blows his wondrous horn. Old worlds die and new be born. A fiery dragon will cross the sky 6 times before this earth shall die. Mankind will tremble and frightened be, for this heralds the 6th in the prophecy. For 7 days and 7 nights, man will watch the awesome sight. The tides will rise beyond their ken to bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain to shore. And flooding waters rushing in will flood the lands with such a din that mankind cowers in muddy fin and snarls about his fellow men. He bares his teeth and fights and kills, and secretes food in secret hills, and ugly in his fear he lies, to kill marauders, thieves, and spies. Man flees in terror from the floods, and lies in blood, and spilling blood by mankind's hands will stain and bitter many lands. And when the dragon's tail is gone, man forgets and smiles and carries on. Very graphic, I know, but she's also specific that it's many lands. Nowhere in here is it the entire world. However, Phoenix does that a lot. It's very hemispheric or it's very regional, but it's bad wherever it happens. So that's the Earthless South Hill Mother Shipton Yorkshire prophecy. Lot of specific information. It's the sixth seal of Revelation. Yeah, you got to remember, from my Archaics veterans, you already know what was the most common epithet given to the Phoenix in ancient times. The sky dragon. It was always called a sky dragon every time it appeared, and that's the terminology she used as well. So, Nostradamus focusing on the month of May 2040, as you've seen in these prophecies and what's going to happen. Mother Shipton saying it's 100 years after the whole world, half the world died in a world war. Okay, 2040 is the target year. We're not surprised by that, though. The Phoenix phenomenon, starting with 4309 BC, we had these references in the Gnostic Nag Hammadi libraries naming the Phoenix as a testimony against, it will keep a testimony against the archons. The Phoenix is also called the bringer of destruction in the same text.
This is another one from our Archaics veterans. Today, Barry came back from a trip from Corpus Christi recently, but today he came to my property and he delivered something to me. I'm doing the video today. I haven't read this whole book. I don't need to. I'll get to it, but you need to see right now what this contains. Barry knew that it was going to have some gems in it, but he didn't know. He didn't know what I was going to find. This is an amazing find. I have told you guys many times that the elite understand what happened in 1902, and they hid it from the rest of us. History books have been purged. All the publishers were in on it. I have been very, very adamant in basically disclosing to you guys all these things that I find out about the year 1902. Some of it bled over into 1903. I've told you about what Charles Fort said. It was 1902, that other dark age, and what Nostradamus says about 1902 as well. So I'm going to show you this book because what I found is profound. This is the book. It is the newspaper clippings the front page, year by year, anniversary pages for the 108 years, starting in 1884, of the Los Angeles Times. Now, 1902, the events can be seen in many of my videos. I have 4 videos, maybe 5 videos with 1902 in the title or subtitle, but I discuss 1902 in probably as many as 40 videos. It is on the 138-year Phoenix phenomenon. Edits, resets, alterations in the holography of our world. The elite know the timeline. They understand every 138 years this happens. They understand exactly what the implications are. But why don't they want the rest of us to know? All right, guys, let's begin this excursion into Front Page, a collection of historical headlines from the Los Angeles Times, 1881 to 1989. There's my coin. You guys know in past dissertations, I show my coin a lot, man, to show you the authenticity of of what I have in my possession. This is not a video culled from another source. This is in my studio. Now, we're going to move on. We got a lot to cover. I don't know how much we're going to go, but you can do your own research because the editor is Darlene Geis and the assistant editor is Anne. This is a Yarwowski, I believe. Now, I'm only pointing these out for those of you who understand what Harry N. Abrams is about. You can do your own homework, but this is Harry N. Abrams Incorporated. This is a publisher. You got to understand who puts these materials out and what their agendas are to really understand the flow of the Archaix data, what we're talking about. So we can move through here. Censorship is real, guys. It's been going on for a very long period of time. Americans are just waking up to just how much of the historical record was deliberately placed there to get us to believe in things that do not exist and to hide things that actually did happen. So none of this is really relevant. We don't need to go into the introductory material. We need to go into the actual photographs starting in 1881. So we're going to start right here. This is the very first volume. I'm going to move this down a little bit. This is the very first volume. This is volume 1 of the Los Angeles Times. The very first time this newspaper ever came out. The Los Angeles Daily Times News. California, Sunday morning, December 4th. Here it is, December 4th, 1881. I know you guys can see that. So, nothing of real interest. Somebody personally selected which pages. There's 365 days in a year. They personally selected which pages they wanted to show. And we know from looking through old newspapers, because this is at Archaix, what we do. We go through all these things. We know that giants have been found, archaeological excavations. Somebody very carefully picked out and selected these pages that are very, very sanitized all throughout this book. That is one thing I noticed. But still, some gems came out. So we move on, of course, to 1882. It's kind of blurry on the original photograph too, but it's 1882. And of course, after 1882, you have 1883. I'm going somewhere with this, guys. It's not really important what's being discussed all here. All this is, some of it's real history, some of it may not be. But it's a book many people can get. Barry accidentally found it and knew he had a gem when he saw it. This is 1884. So we started with 1881. It's really hard to see that, but it says 1884. It's just really corrupted in the photo. Really wish there was a better way to get a light on that. Maybe. Sometimes I just got to bring it all the way up, don't I? Make sure y'all know. It says 1884. There it is. 1884. I know y'all see that. All right. So, don't want this video to go longer than necessary. I want to get to my point. This is 1885. Some of these old photos, you can see it 1885. Again, 1886. You can see where the photos bleed out a little bit, but it does say 1886, and you can see it. All about old maps, all kinds of excursions. People paid other people to escort them across the wide, empty spaces of the United States. It seemed very popular back then. There's a lot of articles about that here. A lot of ads. Pioneer type stuff. So 1886 got a second page. Look at that. Imagine that. 1886 got a second page. 1886 got a third page. There's some references in here to the flood of 1886. For those of you Tartaria, and I know a bunch of you dudes are putting out some pretty good material on unusual stuff. This book here's got some material on a flood that happened in 1886 that was pretty devastating. Found at last, Peter Lurcher's body. I don't know anything about it. 1886 got three front pages in here. May 11th, 1887. 1887. Let's move this back to where you guys can see it better. That is 1887. I might need to move my light. Well, I can't move my light. It's a ring light around a magnifier. 1887. So, we will move straight over here to 1888. Of course. Why? Because 1888 follows 1887. And I know you guys think that that statement is ridiculous. And so do I. So what we're going to find requires explanation. 1889. 1889, it follows 1888. Somebody went through great care. I find it very interesting that there are no photos in none of these old newspapers here. Cameras were being used in the Civil War in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. Yeah, all these are illustrations. No photographs. 1889. Some of the artwork's pretty good. Calligraphy's pretty good too. And of course, another for 1889. Right there. I know y'all can see that. And the great year of 1890. Remember 1890, guys? We got reports from Ohio. Thousands of people looked up in the sky in 1890 and saw a city floating in the sky. 1890. So, 1891 to 1900. Here's a real interesting piece right here about the old year giving up the infant for the new year. This is really popular all the way in the 16th, 17th century. The old man represents the old year. He's right here. I might lift this up. The new year is the infant. And that's Lady Fortune, 1890 to 1891, while bearing tribute to our material prosperity. Pretty interesting stuff, guys. But it's not my point. Pretty interesting stuff. All illustrated. It's all pen and ink. Something about past and present there. All right, so this is a 10-year anniversary of the Los Angeles Times. So, 1880 to 1891. Over here, where are we at? Where's that date at? Where is that date? 1891, right there. It's got a period making it look like an L, but it's not. You can see it with a naked eye better than you can see it with a magnifier, actually. That is not a 189L. There's a period there that's blurred out. It's actually 1891. Now, we're going to move on. And I got to show you, dude, 1892, guys. 1892. We're not surprised by this because 1892 follows 1891. 1893. Again, we have all this beautiful pen and ink art. Took a lot of time. This is how they did stuff in the old newspapers, right? Pen and ink art. 1894. Right there. And I'm pretty damn sure that after 1894, we're going to find us in 1895. 1895. Los Angeles of today. Look at that Los Angeles. Look at that pen and ink art about how beautiful Los Angeles was. Yeah, 1896. Yeah, I don't have to magnify that. It's right there. 1896. Beautiful Los Angeles. All right. 1896. Got another page. Your old Uncle Sam there. Oh, it's a free exposition of Japanese and Chinese and Japanese curios. Look at all these little ads on the side. Photographs speak for themselves. Right there. Look at that. Photographs speak for themselves. There's no photographs in these newspapers. 1897. We know it follows 1896. Right? And we know. Here it is. 1897. 1898. There's the battleship Maine blowed up. Now, it's not like, remember guys, somebody put this book together to preserve for the future what was reported in the newspaper of Los Angeles Deal in the past. This is what modern publishers do all the time. It's called redacting. May 2nd, 1898. Yep. And that's before 1899, right there at the top of the page. $18.99. You've seen in my chronicle on it. You had all kinds of things happening. Well, here's another one. 1899. Mother Earth shook. It's about earthquakes. Got all kinds of local news. A bunch of this all this local news in California. Really interesting stuff in 1899. Again, we have the great year of 1900. We done turned over into a whole new century. Here it is. 1900. You guys can see that. And here it is, 1901. There it is right there. Look at the top of that page. 1901. We got all kinds of stuff going on. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Blood is thicker than water. 1901. Talking about blood. I remember some things I told you guys in videos about blood in 1901. President shot twice right here. He died 7 days later. Here it is. September 7th, 1901. Nice portrait right there. That too is artwork. Everything I've showed you is artwork. Yep. Look at that. Japan declares war. Wait a minute. Hold on. The top of the page. What? How's this happening? February 9th, 1904. Wait a minute. Let's just keep going. Hold on. November 9th, 1904. And real photographs are being used. Hold on. Let me turn a couple pages real quick before I go back and show. Wait a minute. This is all photography. Wait a minute. Hold on. These are real pictures. Wait a minute. This isn't ink work anymore. These are all real photos. What is that? That's 1908. That's 1907. Hold on. There's a mystery here, guys. Wait a minute. What is that? That's 1909. That's 1909. Okay, for anybody who hasn't caught on yet, I know there's a few of you in there. I try not to read real fast because I know you guys can't hear me fast. 1898, 1899, 1899, 1900. September 7th, 1901. September 7th, 1901. What in the hell happened in the year 1902 that the editors of this magazine refused to put 1902 in there, or the year that Nostradamus mentioned, 1903? Here is the next page, 1904. If you think a page is missing, let me show you something. 1901. There are no page numbers on the bottom of this book. You see down here? No page numbers. Look at the bottom of the book. This is 1901. On page 50. Hold on, I'm going to have to get that in there. On page 50. You can't miss that. Which makes this page 51. Let's make sure you guys get that. That's page 51. Still 1901. There it is. Again, 1904. That is 1904, my brothers. 1904. 1904. Page numbers on the bottom. Remember, our last page was 51. What page is that? That's 52. That's 53. No sense in going into it, guys. Starting right here in 1904, 1905, the entire thing is full of actual photography of events. We even have pictures of the Titanic in 1912. We have We have no references in here of Wilbur Wright 1903 because it's not in here. 1902 and 1903 is missing, but we've got first flight mentioning over here. Exhibition flights are going on in 1910. So big news are the pictures of the Titanic. More exhibitions in flight in 1911. We have the Titanic, 1,500 lost their lives. A lot of people on YouTube are talking about the Titanic is fake. It's a psyop. It didn't happen. Here's an actual photograph of the Titanic back in the day and the newspaper articles for that time period. But this is a man-made, man-contrived disaster. We know what happened. Those of us who researched Titanic, you know what happened. That wasn't an iceberg. But we have a problem. Right after that, somewhere we got the Lusitania mentioned in here somewhere. I seen it when I was flipping through here. There's a Lusitania right there. Got torpedoed. People say that's a false flag. That didn't happen at all either. But it doesn't matter. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video, guys, I'm just going to flick through all this. The point of this video, guys, is that the Great Reset of 1902 has been hidden from the public. It has been hidden in multiple different ways. When you have over 40 to 50 major publishers that control 95% of all publishing content that's come out in the last century, it's very easy to hide major events that happened. It's very easy to hide. Listen, guys, I'm in Willis, Texas. If a major event unfolded in Houston, Texas, and there was a media blackout, and the people involved in that event ceased to exist, there's no way I'd ever know what happened. There's no way you would ever know what happened. But the elite know what happened in 1902 and the events that bled over into 1903. This has been a major paramount item on my channel. You need to go watch my 3 videos on 1902 and my 2 follow-up videos on 1902 to understand just how in-depth this goes, and read the comments to those videos on 1902, because many of my listeners have found their own mysteries about 1902 that are very compelling. Because I was dealing with overall news items, but a lot of you have found things in your local microfiche, in your local libraries, and it's blowing your mind, blew my mind when you informed me of it. It's just the way it is. Our reality is visited by the Phoenix phenomenon. The elite know all about it, and they keep it from us.